Hi folks, Tony Curtin here from Engage Learning and Development. And in this really quick screencast, I want to just take you through what is cognitive load theory. And to do that, I've got a very quick activity I want you to complete here live as you're watching it. Okay, so in a moment on the very next screen, I'm going to show you a series of letters, okay? Without writing them down, I just want you to memorize them. I'm only going to flash them up for about 4 or 5 seconds, okay? So you're going to see a series of letters on the screen, and I'm going to flash them up 4 or 5 seconds. Your job is to hold them in your working memory. Keep them in mind, but don't write them down. No cheating. Okay, 1, 2, 3, go. Okay, now take a pen, piece of paper, and write down the letters as they appeared. Pause this if you have to. So, here's the question. How did you do? How many did you get? There are 12 letters there. You know, I've done this in the past, and most people typically get about 5 to 6, some as low as 3. I've had one person get as many as 9. So a bit of variation, but there seems to be a bit of a cluster around 4 or 5. So you did better than that. You're probably a bit better than average there. So next part of this activity, though, I'm going to show you the same set of 12 letters, and I want you to have a go at remembering them again. And I'm going to ask you to write them down after the activity. Okay, so no cheating again. Put the pen and paper to the side. Are you ready? Go. Okay, that was 5 seconds. Write down the letters as they appeared. Away you go. So here's probably a silly question. How did you do? You know, like I said, when I've done this task in the past, people usually get, in the second part, 9 to 12. So they usually get them all right. And there's a couple of reasons. And maybe pause the video and have a think about, well, why was the first one harder than the second one? And the reasons are as follows. Well, firstly, the second lot of letters, they were chunked. They were chunked. So there wasn't, previously there was no chunking to them. They were just 12 random letters. Interestingly, in the second exercise, not only were they chunked, but they were chunked in acronyms that, at least if you lived in Australia and you worked in the vet sector, which is where I work and where most of the people that watch this work in, many of those acronyms would have made sense to you. There was one there, NSW, New South Wales, AUS, which is short for Australia here. There was VET, and then the classic IBM. And so it was easier for a couple of reasons. One, it was chunked into 4 parts. But secondly, you already had a developed what we call mental schema or a mental model around those acronyms, if you did. You know, when I say New South Wales, or let's go broader, when I say Australia, there's a whole bunch of things in your long-term memory that are part of that what we call schema or that mental model that describes Australia. Take a minute to think about what they are. I mean, you might have beaches come to mind, the Sydney Opera House, Sydney Harbour Bridge. Maybe a map of Australia comes to mind. Maybe some family that you have live in Australia comes to mind, or a trip that you made to Australia, or your time here, whatever it might be. So you have these developed mental schemas, and there was this chunking going on. Now, I use this activity to explain and introduce this idea of cognitive load theory. And cognitive load theory is a evidence-based theory. Unlike some learning theories out there, cognitive load theory has a really strong evidence-based base, and it's based on our understanding of how the brain works, or you can think of that as the human cognitive architecture. at least how we know it, or how we think it works, or we believe it works based on experimental research up until, well, when I'm filming this, 2020. And so cognitive load theory sort of incorporates our knowledge, at least to date in 2020, about how the brain's evolved over hundreds of thousands of years. And so cognitive load theory is about understanding, it was primarily broken into two parts. Firstly, as a designer, as a facilitator, as a trainer, understanding that we all have what's called cognitive limit. And depending on the research that you're looking at, this is typically accepted as, we can hold about 7 items in our working memory, plus or minus 2. So that could be 5, it could be 9. There is some research that shows it could be even less than that. It's around 3 to 4. But, this 7 plus or minus 2 seems to be fairly well accepted. So we have this limit, this cognitive limit, as to how many novel, new items we can hold in working memory at any one time. And I emphasize novel there because we're going to touch on this in just a moment, but when we have a developed mental model or mental schema around a particular subject, and we have developed, or another way to put that is we have developed long-term memories, there appears to be no limit to our ability to access long-term memory or how much we can access from long-term memory. Now, the second part of cognitive load theory to understand is what we've touched on, or what I've touched on a couple of times, is that the theory is concerned with, or at least we define learning as the development of mental schema. And you can think of mental schemas like the development of mental models, long-term memory mental models. And I gave you the example around Australia before. You will have a mental model around Australia, and you will have a whole bunch of stuff that sits within that schema, that mental model. And you can access it quite regularly. The more you think about Australia, the more things might come to mind. You might now be thinking about Crocodile Dundee, the movie, put another shrimp on the barbie, Russell Crowe, all of these, I think he's a New Zealander actually, but all of these things come to mind. So these two ideas, cognitive limit, that our learners, people that are coming to our classes and people that we're designing for, can only take in so much novel information at any given time. And that also this idea that we have these mental schemas or mental models which are unlimited, which appear to be unlimited, or our ability to access information from them is unlimited. And so one of the key tenets of cognitive load theory is, as designers and as trainers as well, that our role is to facilitate the movement of new knowledge from working memory into the long-term memory. And this development, one of our key roles is the development of mental schema. Now, on this idea of Australia, John Sweller's one of the founders, if not the founder, of cognitive load theory, an Australian guy, and he makes a great quote here. And as you get into cognitive load theory and you start to understand it a little better, and I've got a few videos on this that I'm sharing with you, he makes a great comment, and I think this is an important one just to absorb, is that if we're ignoring or we're not aware of or inadvertently breaching cognitive load theory, our designs will inevitably be deficient. We can only take in so much, and if we're ignoring what it takes to develop mental schema, which is these long-term memories, then we're kind of missing the point. Now, another important element of cognitive load theory are the 3 different types of cognitive load, which I'm going to tackle in the very next video. So there you have it, a quick summary of cognitive load theory, why it's important, and how it relates to our work as designers and facilitators. If you liked this video, give it a big thumbs up. subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video. I'm Tony Curtin. Bye for now.